Hi there guys, I'm Nikhil from GreedyTech and this is the complete review of the Motorola E7 Power. In India, Motorola has launched the Moto E7 Power in two variants. Base variant is priced at 7,500 rupees for 2GB of RAM and 32GB of storage, and the next variant is priced at 8,300 rupees for 4GB of RAM and 64GB of storage. Now the pricing for the both variants is pretty interesting. Well, the entry-level model might be pretty affordable to most people, but you're only getting 2GB of RAM, where the bigger variant is the most commonly seen variant with 4GB of RAM and 64GB of storage. So if you're planning to buy this phone, I would suggest you to get the 4GB variant for the long-term usage. Now as for the review, I'll start off with the design and build. Just like most of the phones in this price segment, even the Motorola E7 Power has a plastic build. On the back, it has a plastic back panel with a nice matte finish, and you also get that motor dimple at the center, which also acts like a fingerprint scanner. It has got all the buttons on the right side. We have the volume buttons, power button, and also a dedicated button for Google Assistant. All these buttons are sufficiently elevated, also have a nice texture to them, and also have a nice clicky feel to them. This phone has a thickness of 9.2 mm and weighs 200 grams. As for the thickness, in hand it fits pretty comfortably, feels like a pretty long phone, and as for the weight, it has a bit of weight to it, but it's not too bad. Like, weight distribution is pretty decent. I do wish the weight could have been reduced, but considering this phone has a massive 5000 mAh battery, we really can't complain. Now one of the major things to note about the design is its speaker placement. This phone has a backfiring speaker, so depending upon the position of the phone or how you place it, your audio experience might vary. So overall, in terms of design and build, I really don't have any complaints. It's top notch in the price segment. Now when it comes to the hardware department, this phone comes with all the basic sensors, including a fingerprint scanner. Some of the most basic or budget phones from other brands don't even have a fingerprint scanner. So compared to those phones, you do get a fingerprint scanner with this phone. As for its performance, it is pretty fast and definitely usable. By the way, there is no face unlock feature on this phone. Now here's the SIM card tray. This phone supports dual SIM, but you only get a nano SIM slot along with a hybrid SD card slot. I guess this is one of the few cons for this phone. If Moto could have added a dedicated SD card slot, then it could have been better. Besides that, this phone also comes with FM radio, auto brightness sensor works without any issues. As for Wi-Fi, it only supports 2.4 GHz. It doesn't support 5 GHz. I know many people say 5 GHz is important, but for most people, only 2.4 GHz Wi-Fi is accessible, and even in terms of range, 2.4 GHz is much more practical. So anyway, there's no problem with Wi-Fi either. Now when it comes to the display, this phone sports a 6.5-inch IPS Max Vision display with HD+ resolution with 20:9 aspect ratio, and that's what makes the phone look much more longer than your regular phone. Now the display on this phone is pretty good, color reproduction and video sharpness are pretty great, even the peak brightness of this phone is pretty good. The only downside for the display is its HD+ resolution. If you're someone who have sharp eyes and you can pixel peep into stuff, then yes, you might find some things pixelated. But for most people, and even for me, whether it's for regular usage or while media consumption, watching videos, most of the times I didn't notice anything pixelated. So even though I wish Moto could have improved the resolution, for the price and the screen size, I think HD+ resolution is still usable, especially for a normal user. Now the cameras on this phone are pretty decent, especially the rear camera does a really good job. It saturates the colors, makes everything look poppy. It has good color reproduction, even the dynamic range is pretty decent. Overall, I have been pretty satisfied with the rear camera, especially when it comes to the color reproduction and the details. It doesn't have a lot when it comes to dynamic range, but it's still pretty good and pretty usable. As for the front camera, these are some sample shots. It does a pretty decent job even in low lighting conditions. Even the color reproduction is pretty good. As for video recording, here's a sample footage from the rear camera. There's no electronic image stabilization, but if you can just hold your phone steadily and stay put on a place, you can take a pretty decent footage. Besides the shaky factor, color reproduction and dynamic range are pretty decent. I think the cameras on this phone are definitely worth the price. Now when it comes to performance, this phone sports a MediaTek Helio G25 processor with GE8320 GPU with 4GB of RAM and 64GB of storage. It's a pretty entry-level processor. It's good enough for regular usage and even for some light gaming. Don't try to play some heavy games like PUBG or Call of Duty, but if you want to play some smaller games like Candy Crush or Angry Birds, it's not gonna be a problem. For a normal user, for regular browsing, net banking and stuff like that, there won't be any problem. In my testing, I've used the 4GB variant, and even the multitasking is pretty good. It could hold up to 8 applications in memory at the same time. By the way, there are no heating issues with this phone either. Whether it's my gaming test or the heat test, maximum temperature I have seen was just 37 degrees at a room temperature of 26 degrees. So overall performance on this phone is pretty decent and it is sufficient for a normal user. Now when it comes to the software department, this phone is running pure stock Android based on Android 10 and that's it. It's pure vanilla stock Android, there's no bloatware, there's no useless apps or any kind of advertisements, it's completely clean. And because of that you don't get any extra cool features, but if you're someone who likes stock Android, then you'll really appreciate it. As of now, it still has the December security patch, but it should be getting a security patch pretty soon. Now for the audio department, audio experience over headset is pretty average, just like most of the phones these days. As for the speaker loudness, here's a quick audio sample. Now the speaker loudness on this phone is pretty decent, it's not too loud, but sufficient for regular media consumption and ringtones and alarms. Most of the time it depends upon how you're placing your phone. Because of the positioning of the speaker, you have to think about a bit to get the best experience. As for its position, I really don't have any complaints, but I wish Motorola could have placed it like a regular bottom firing speaker. Now finally, when it comes to the battery department, this phone sports a massive 5000 mAh battery and comes with a regular 10 watts power adapter. There's no fast charging, so if you want to charge it completely from 0 to 100%, it takes about 3 hours. Battery life on this phone is pretty good. For a normal user, it can easily last for 2 days if you don't do a lot of media consumption. And by that I mean watching a lot of videos. So for a normal user with normal usage, you can easily use for 2 days. Even if you're a heavy user who watches a lot of videos or play a lot of smaller games, it can definitely last you an entire day. So guys, to conclude, if you're looking for an entry-level phone under 10,000 rupees with pure stock Android and a bigger battery life and obviously a bigger display, then you can definitely go with the Motorola E7 Power. Well, honestly speaking, there are very few phones out there that actually offer you pure stock Android. So if that's what you really like, then you can definitely go for this phone. So guys, what do you think about this phone? Do let me know by commenting below this video, and if you're planning to buy this phone, use the link in the description. It always helps the channel. With that said, see you in my next video. Nikhil, signing off.